I will drive back roads all day long before I will spend hours and hours and hours on a 400 series highway, just blindly driving and it never stopping, ever. So that's something to consider. Hello there friends, welcome back to our channel. Today I wanted to go over a few things that Dylan and I definitely had to consider before we made the decision to go from a more suburban area into moving into a rural community in Ontario, Canada. When you start talking about the idea of moving to a more rural location, it's easy to get caught up in the romantics of it. For Dylan and I, it was envisioning ourselves sitting outside, enjoying a beautiful treed property, having a nice cup of coffee. Before you decide where you want to move, these are definitely some things that you absolutely want to consider. For Dylan and I, the main push was that we wanted to downsize our home both physically and financially. We also wanted to get some property that we could enjoy and also give our dogs the ability to run free, roam, and live their best life. There was a few things that ultimately determined from there where we felt that we would be happiest geographically. First thing that you're definitely going to want to consider is your proximity to amenities. There's a whole lot to unpack here. Number one, for Dylan and I, there was two things that ultimately determined our rough area that we wanted to move to. Number one was closeness to our families. We both wanted to be at least within a few hours so that we can go and visit people pretty easily. Number two, we also wanted to be close to our major airport, which is Toronto. We would really like to do some more traveling, hopefully. Being close to the airport, at least within a few hours, was important for us. So that's how we first decided where it was we were going to move. The next thing that you want to think about too is also your proximity to grocery stores, shopping, restaurants, all that kind of stuff. And this is all going to depend on your personal preference, what your lifestyle is. If you have children, you may want to consider if you're running them in for different sports and after school activities. You may not want to live 30-40 minutes out of town if you're having to go to hockey practice all the time. Depending on your personal situation as well, something that you may want to consider is how close you are to medical facilities, how close you are in case of, a 911 emergency. Dylan and I are not all that close, but considering our age and our health, we figured that really wasn't a huge priority to us, but it definitely would be something depending on your personal situation. So that's where you want to first consider where exactly it is you're comfortable with and what suits your lifestyle and the things that you need to have access to. Number two is, and we get asked this all the time, internet was also a huge thing for us when we were choosing a property. The first thing that we would look at if we found a house that looked okay was its access to internet. Now you can usually log on to whatever local providers there are and see if there's any availability. We got super lucky where we ended up because there happens to be fairly decent Bell internet where we are. We didn't have to rely on a hub, which was not going to be good for Dylan and I, given the amount of usage we have. The downside for us is our download speeds are not bad. We get up to 10 megabits, which is enough to stream and do all the things that we need to do. The only problem is with running a YouTube channel, upload speeds are garbage. That generally involves driving to a nice little spot by the lake. So this is what I call the lakeside office, where you just tether with the good old LTE signal that you get beside the lake here. This is how we upload all of our videos for YouTube. Depending on what you do online, internet is definitely going to be something you want to consider. For us, that was huge because we both work from home. You will most likely not get the speeds you're used to in a suburban area, but again, that can depend on how rural you are. And the other thing with rural communities as well, if you do find a house that the Bell, Rogers, or whoever it is says that there's internet, you should actually call, because sometimes, usually based it on your postal code, sometimes they service that postal code, but they may not actually service that street. You want to triple check and make sure that there is internet available at the property. There are hubs available, however, they generally really limit your bandwidth. And again, I know for Dylan and I, that was not going to be suitable because of the crazy usage that him and I go through in a month. And number three, you definitely want to consider the cost of living. There is a general consensus that if you live in the country, your living expenses are going to be cheaper. This is true and not true, depending on what factors you're considering. Housing costs can be significantly cheaper, especially if you're used to paying city prices. This grossly varies depending on where in Ontario you're looking for a property. So housing prices can definitely be cheaper. However, things that you want to consider that you might end up paying more for are hydro. Hydro delivery rates are a little bit more expensive if you live in a low density area. You may also pay significantly more for gas because you're having to travel. For us, it's 30-40 minutes into town one way, so you're paying a little bit more for gas, but again, that depends on how often you go to town. The other thing, this is especially true if you buy more land, the maintenance of your property might be a little bit more expensive than what you're used to if you're coming from a subdivision or a smaller property. Dylan and I now have a 300-foot driveway that we have to get snow removal for, and we currently don't have the equipment to do that ourselves. I don't mind shoveling snow, however, a 300-foot driveway is a little bit insane with the amount of snow that we get where we move. We pay for a snowplow service right now, and eventually we'll hopefully invest in equipment to do it ourselves. But again, there are things like that. If you're coming from an urban area, chances are you are not already equipped with tractors and equipment and all that to take care of a larger property. If you have a big lawn, you might need a lawn tractor because a push mower could take you a little while. That is something else that you want to consider, is your maintenance costs may also be a little bit higher having more property. Number 4, you're pretty much always going to have a commute, whether that be to work if you are actually going to a physical job. For Dylan and I, we work from home, so it's just a matter of commuting into town for the gym, groceries, shopping, whatever it may be. The nice thing now is you can order so many things online, which is a huge lifesaver, so you don't have to go into town for every little thing. And more often than not, it's a really pretty drive. Even though when you live in a more rural area, it does take longer and your commute is longer. If you want to go to town, for us, 30-40 minutes every time we need groceries or whatever. The one good thing about it is, you know, without a doubt, it's taking you 30-40 minutes to get to town. Dylan and I used to live downtown Toronto, like right in the thick of it, Yonge and Dundas, downtown Toronto. And if I needed to leave the city that day, I had to structure my entire schedule over traffic. From our condo, sometimes it would take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours to get to the highway. And if I came home in the middle of the night, sometimes it would take 15 minutes. I didn't realize until we got out of the city, and even living in the GTA, I found a similar problem. You don't realize how much traffic and the chaos of people dictate your schedule. Yes, it's a longer commute, but you always know how long something's gonna take you, and you can do it with freedom. So personally, I very much enjoy that, but that's just me. And number 5, and I touch on this because of a personal experience of Dylan and I. We lived in a different, smaller community in a different part of Ontario. We were first-time home buyers, didn't really know a lot about housing markets, and we purchased a home in an area that was near impossible to resell. Something else you might want to consider, especially if you are used to living in a city dwelling where houses usually last days, weeks, maybe a month on the market. When you move to a smaller community, the resale may not be as quick. And I bring this up because it's a different commitment. If you want to move somewhere and you figure you'll just try it out, see how it goes, if you don't like it, you can always sell. Yes, that's true, but you might be sitting on the property a little bit longer than you would in the city, depending on what the housing market is. So that is something that you would definitely want to check with a real estate agent before you dive into. So those are the top 5 things that I would suggest anyone consider before they make the decision to move from a suburban, an urban, downtown core before you move into a rural area. And again, how you answer those questions is going to define on how rural you want to go. For some people, it may mean moving just outside of the GTA and one of the smaller communities there, and for some people it may mean moving to the middle and nowhere in northern Ontario. It's all going to depend on your personal preferences and what works for you. That's all I got. If you guys have any other questions, please feel free to drop it in the comment section below. Happy to answer any questions that anyone else might have who's looking to transition. And in the meantime, if you're enjoying our videos, please subscribe, and you can always watch more videos over here. And until next time, we'll see you later.